Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Her Own Way, Embracing Equity. Today I'm joined by one of the men who we call men who are championing women causes. He is currently managing partner, Sustainabl Advisory LLP. He has over 30 years of diverse experience. He has even his bachelor's degree in economics, history, English, and literature. His bring this 30 years of diverse experiences in advertising, television, LTE, telephony, and digital publishing. Digital publishing. He has also been project director at National Incubation Center Lahore at LUMS University. He, having invested in multiple startups as an angel investor and having actively worked with startup businesses in the last 9 years. He's a key evangelizer for creating high growth business that impacts our community. FSJ, as he's commonly known, brings to his, and we have today with us Faisal Sherjan Saab. Assalamu alaikum, Faisal Saab, kaise hai aap?
Ji, walaikum salam. Bisma, how are you?
I'm great, alhamdulillah. What a celebrated, career you have got. Such diverse experience, or kahan se media se start kiya, and then into entrepreneurship.
Gee, my career actually started with the army. That is the first kind of professional engagement I had. I was commissioned in an armored regiment. And then I resigned my commission after about 3.5 years. And I decided to serve in a different capacity. That took me to Karachi and, to the Dawn newspaper for all of 1 month, and then I moved to advertising. So from advertising, I went on to media, which was television, both locally and international. Most of the journey has been producing and disseminating content, and then going on to entrepreneurship. Myself also in a couple of endeavors. Some of them were successful, and some were not. So that eventually took me to LUMS in 2016, end of 2016. So I became part of the LUMS Center of Entrepreneurship. Usi baat RFP aayi bhi thi for the NICs. So we pitched for Lahore initially, and we won that. And then we pitched for Quetta with the Buitams, the university there in Quetta, and we won that also. So we were the leads there. So that was what I did for almost 3+ years till 2020 June. And then, during that COVID period, and then I left LUMS. And since then, I've been involved with, trainings all over the country, specifically for micro entrepreneurs and for women, right? So we've done a lot of trainings. And those are all for micros. I have been involved with the tech entrepreneurship for women also in terms of Circle, right, with Sadaf Abid, assisting her in the last 4 years. So this is the kind of journey I've had. I've got 3 daughters myself, and all 3 of them are entrepreneurs. They have their businesses. 2 of them actually work in the same business, which is Pre-Loved. And the third one, she's a yoga instructor. She has her own studio. She's also a qualified nutritionist, so she does that. So that's been the environment in which I've been operating. And I have a very clear thesis that unless we create space for women in our lives, particularly professional lives, in mainstream economic life, then progress in Pakistan will not be possible. We do not sit very well in the human parity, in the gender parity index. World Economic Forum puts out that list every year, and we are a dismal 3rd from bottom. So we really need to do something to change all that. And I believe that only with that change will we have an environment which is progressive enough and for Pakistan to grow. If 50% of our population, almost 50%, 48 point some percent, is excluded, there is no way that we can grow as a nation.
एब्सोल्युटली। फैसल साहब, आपने बताया अभी आप ट्रेनिंग्स करा रहे हैं और आपकी जो अपनी कंसल्टेंसी है वो ट्रेनिंग्स पर काम कर रही है। आपने बताया दैट आप एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के लिए जो करिकुलम है वो डिजाइन कर रहे हैं। सो व्हाट एल्स उस पे अभी क्या चल रहा है मजीद?
देखिए, the essence of entrepreneurship is actually empathy, right? So
या
it is, we start with design thinking, we start with understanding of the other person, understanding of the customer, understanding their problems, you know, identifying those pain points, looking, each pain point is actually an opportunity also, if you recognize what it is. And if you are empathetic enough to really dig into it and understand it, right? So from there, everything starts to flow. And that has been the experience. Whenever we've touched that chord and we've worked along with it, plus, our thesis as sustainable is that it's not just about one workshop, right? We may be engaged with a workshop, but we have to look way beyond that workshop and stay engaged. So, I mean, if you check our phones, myself, Salva, or Yasser, the three partners, you'll find groups, WhatsApp groups of the people that we've been engaged with, whether it was in Chitral, whether it was in Gizar or Gilgit or Peshawar or Karachi or Multan, Faisalabad, wherever we've gone and we've trained, you will find that even 6 months, a year after the program, we are still engaged with them. We
ओके।
still take our time to help where we need to help wherever there's anybody reaches out. And then counseling, beyond the trainings of entrepreneurship, beyond telling them how to grow their business, beyond growth hacking, beyond talking about how to acquire another customer. It's also understanding what their personal issues are at times, because those affect deeply. So Salva does a lot of that work, right? Occasionally, I'm asked questions, or Yasser is asked questions, and we respond in that way. So it's a holistic thing. It's not just a one-time thing. It's not just conducting one workshop and then moving on. It does look very kind of. It looks like a burden, but it isn't. It's something that we believe in, and that's
ओके।
how we. That's how, and your whole kind of theme of embracing equity. Without that, it's not going to happen. We need to realize that, right? We are a population of 230 million now, coming up to 230 million. And if I look at that 50% figure or 48 point whatever percent figure, we're talking about 110 million plus people, right? 110 million plus women, young girls also. So there are opportunities. We've trained, girls as young as 16 and 17 in being able to do something and earn a living or earn have some earnings. So the pressure on them to get married decreases. And that is really what happens. The economic pressure that the family has, the first kind of solution they try to find is get the young girl married off. And that exacerbates the population problem we have already, right? If you're getting married as young as 16 and 17, you don't really know what what kind of a life you're going to lead, what kind of an environment you will go into. And you are not mature enough, right, in your thinking to be able to manage a lot of the challenges that come from going into a new home. If you have, if you're economically qualified and empowered, then the inclination to get you married very early goes away, because now you're a contributing member of the family, right? So it makes a huge difference.
Yes,
And then, of
yes.
course, at a later stage, I mean, I am also engaged with the APWM, which is All Pakistan Women's Movement, and that is from again Javeria Khan. Javeria herself is a single mother with two sons, right? So she realized after her divorce that women need to be more economically empowered because she faced problems, right? So she had a lot of pressure on her, right, just to be able to manage her own life and her sons. And she's done really well now. And she's helping other women in the same way. So we've been involved with at least I've been involved in trainings for her cohorts. And it's a very rewarding, very fulfilling kind of engagement when you see somebody's life being assisted, where you are understanding what their problem is, where you're helping them develop a small business, and that joy that comes from being able to face the challenge that economics brings in our lives. It is an extremely rewarding feeling.
So when you started 30 years ago, what was the work culture like for females?
Okay, the kind of work I was doing, advertising and then media. So there were a lot of women already working there. So the environment in which I was working, or the kind of schools I was working in, it wasn't so bad. There was still the problem that you did not have women in positions of what I would say decision-making, positions of responsibility, right? So that was a little low, but there was a higher incidence of women working in the kind of disciplines that I was in. Advertising, we had a lot of girls in the studio who were doing creative work. We would obviously have audiovisual, right? So we were dealing with lots of uh, you know, testimonial and advertising models. So that was there. Copywriters, we had a lot of women in the copywriting discipline. So there was always that mix was there. The agency I was in, one of the partners was a woman, and she was very empowered. She was very senior. She was a equity holder in the company, right? So from there, then when I went abroad, I was working in England for 3 years at one stint, and then over there also, it was a South Asian TV channel that we had set up, and I had a lot of women working alongside me. So there was a mix, but I know that in other disciplines it was very difficult. My wife, she was a banker, so she was a graduate from an international university, and she worked with Habib Bank for many, many years. And she also tells me that she was the only woman at times in different training sessions, or in her department. So it was quite interesting for her. And the whole perspective of being able to convince other people that you're competent to be a manager, you're competent to take decisions, right, was not that easy.
Yes, you talk about female representation, but I do want you talked about female representation, but I wanted to know how enabling these workplaces were where females were working initially, like in your field, advertising and media. When you're talking about that, how enabling or how supportive these workplaces were. I am sure you're aware of many females when they start their journey around 10, 15 years back. They say that proper washrooms nahi hote the females ke. So what was the environment like there?
Those problems were there without a doubt. So there was nothing there for, let's say, an expectant mother or somebody who had a young child. So the concept of maternity leave was not very well understood. There wasn't a creche or a kind of space where you could bring you could bring an infant, right? So those challenges were there, and that is why at times women dropped out of the workspace, right? And they came back after a couple of years. So that was there without a doubt. It's better now in a lot of ways, right? So yes, these challenges were there. Transport was a big issue, right? So most companies were shy and reluctant to provide transport to work and back to home. It improved during the years. I was with the Geo network for many years, and a lot of women used to come in the evening also, because you're working in shifts. So they used to come, and transport was provided to them. That is why when I, kind of invested in a company that was managing rickshaws and all, so we realized that 70% of women were the ones who were using these rickshaws. The rickshaws, was a transport preferred by women, and there were a couple of reasons. Number one, they were convenient; they were easily available because there was always a lot of them. Second was this factor of safety. A lot of women would say, "I felt safe in a rickshaw because the doors didn't lock. And there was no lock on the doors. So I felt safe, and there was this compartmentalization between the driver and the passenger, right? And things change because compulsions, and when the problem is deep enough, then even attitudes change. I remember 2016, yeah, Madiha, who had started a company called Savari, right? She was providing what Uber and Kareem do now. And when I met her, and she was looking for investment, so that's how I met her. She reached out to me, and when we had a conversation, and I asked her, "What is your most difficult challenge?" And she said, "Culture." And I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "Most of my customers are women, and the problem is that when I provide them with a car, questions are asked because the car doesn't look like a taxi, and if she comes home from the university and she's taken one of my vehicles, so her mother is likely to ask her, who's dropping you off, and when she says, well, it was Savari, I say, well, it doesn't look like a taxi. So that problem was there. And then came Uber and Kareem, and again, the women who were using rickshaws shifted to Kareem or to Uber, and one of the key factors there was again safety, right? So they had to launch features like being able to track the ride. The family could track the ride. The moment you got into the vehicle, you would let them know that you're in the vehicle, and now they could see where you were going. So those things. But just imagine that women were then now prepared to sit in the car of a stranger, right? So because the need was so great that they had to accept that.
Faisal Saab, you talked about that when in places where you have worked, yes, women representation was there. Yes, and but there are cultural challenges and the workplace challenges were there. So, why do you think that there was the people or the organizing or the management didn't feel the need to make females more comfortable? Was it the issue of cost or profitability, or was it that they didn't? Was it a lack of empathy? What was the issue that they didn't feel, or women were not competent? What was the issue?
It was clear, simple lack of empathy. They didn't understand that there is a special need. They didn't understand that by providing that need, they actually would increase productivity, right? So that understanding wasn't there. Even the human resource function, they didn't realize of what was required unless a woman came into that function. And that is what I think the change started to happen. That women started to come into those functions at a senior level. I remember GSK was one of those companies that I clearly remember, 15 years ago, that a woman came into that position. She was the head of HR, and she changed the entire environment. One woman, one person can make that difference. So she had empathy. She could understand the problem. She also understood the return on that investment. So many people did not understand the return on investment, even in multinationals. And here was this one person who came and she changed everything. So, her name was Talat, and she had come from Unilever, and she had not come from the HR function, but she developed all that. So one person can make a difference. The problem was always that it was thought as an extra, as some kind of a luxury that was being offered. It wasn't, right? Having a separate bathroom was not a luxury, it was a necessity. But that necessity wasn't being understood till, some people started to realize that, it can really help. Same thing with, providing a creche or providing a space where an infant could be taken care of, right? So, all those things started to happen. I mean, I've seen that happening in good companies as far back as 10, 12 years ago. So even multinationals. And I think the kind of legislation that also came in Punjab, I know, right, that if you had a certain number of women working in your company, you had to provide them these facilities. They were provided by law.
Okay. And where do you come in? How you champion women causes working in these such environment?
I have a very simple understanding of it, that you cannot exclude 50% of your population to start with. Secondly, because I myself, I have three daughters, I have two sisters. So I was always in an environment where I could understand, and I had to equalize. There was no compulsion. It was because of knowing that if I have a certain attitude which is exclusive, it is not going to work. It has to be inclusive. There has to be equity. There has to be equitability. All those things became part of my own makeup. And I guess in some ways, I was fortunate that I was working initially in disciplines where there were already women working, right? So that became a natural, way of looking at things. And I've seen that they bring a lot of what should I say? They bring a lot of cultural elements that are important for productivity in a workspace, right? So it's a very important factor when you realize that and you see the cultural environment in a workspace that develops because of presence of women and presence of women in decision making. It makes a huge difference. When I had shares in various companies that I had invested in, so I've handed over a lot of my own equity to my daughters. So, and they did a very good job. My eldest did a really good job with a company that was in deep trouble. And she, was chosen by the board to become the CEO, and they all regard her as a wartime CEO because the company was in deep trouble. And she saw the company through all that. She learned a lot on that journey. Right? She had to learn a lot about technology. She had to learn a lot about managing in a crisis, and she did a great job. Right? So, and I've seen women do that. I mentioned Javeria. She's the head of marketing for Chaktai. I mean, those are billion rupee, responsibilities she has, and the way she's developed a team, the way she's managed, everything she has to do. She has taken initiatives also. She launched the pink card, which basically gave women a huge discount on tests and all that they need, right? So it has benefited the company. Her thinking has actually benefited Chaptai, and it has grown because she has deep empathy. So she brings that empathy to her role, and she's fantastic
Okay.
in the way she's been managing her team. That's she's one of the senior most people there. After the board level people, it's her who's running the
Okay.
most important functions of the company.
How far you have seen we have come across since when you started working, where women were there but not in senior position, and now how you see, women representation at the higher level.
No, I now see increasingly that
Yeah.
women in decision making, maybe because I come across them because of the work I do. That's one possibility. uh, there aren't as many as we want to see, right? I mean,
Okay.
look at Interloop. Interloop's head of HR is a woman, right? Yes, she's Musaddiq's daughter, but she's very, very competent in what she does. It's not just because she was part of the family; it's because of her own competence. In tech, I'm seeing a lot of women now, right?
Yeah.
And rightly so. That either they're running their own companies. Maruf Kadir is somebody I've known for many years because of engagements with LUMS and NIC. But I've seen Maruf, managing challenges. Even yesterday, before we started, she was having a conversation with me. She was sharing with me the difficulties she's been having in what she's doing currently. Both Maruf and myself, actually, we were at a meeting in Jamia Naimia,
Mm.
and the purpose of that meeting was to actually set up a women entrepreneurship incubator inside their madrasa. And there was a
Mm.
lot of appetite. It didn't happen because of COVID. At some point in time, we're
It
going to
will.
revisit it
Yeah.
and do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there
Faisal
is
sir,
increasing
yeah.
numbers. Like I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Faisal sir, you talked about a lot about equity and inclusivity. What does these terms mean to you?
okay. When I say inclusivity, when I say exclusivity, right? When you separate things, uh, yes, I know, pink is normally associated with women in many, many ways, pink ribbons, all kinds of, things. Uh, I mentioned yesterday that we did an experiment with getting women to drive rickshaws. And consciously and deliberately, we did not give them pink rickshaws. We gave them normal rickshaws that you see on the road. And the purpose of that was inclusivity rather than exclusivity, right? So we didn't want to, if I can say it like that, paint a target on their backs. Just because they were driving a normal rickshaw, their lives were very normal, right? And two of them drove almost 10,000 kilometers each. They drove those rickshaws for almost 2.5 years. It's not an easy job. It's a very tough one, right? So they did that. So that is what I talk about, that you need to create inclusive environments. There are special needs without a doubt, right? We're talking about, just having a separate bathroom. But what's so big about it? Why does it have to be that exclusive, right? It should be an inclusive function. They should be able to get that. It should be part of normalcy, not something that somebody is doing over and above what they're supposed to do. It should be considered when they're building an office or they're creating an office or they're making an office. They should simply consider that as a necessary thing to productivity also, to cultural environment also, in that way. Uh, Salva is currently working with Ascend, which is a school for mountaineering, right? And she was recently up in Skardu. It's an international organization. And when she explains it, it's not just about being learning how to put something on your boots and climb a mountain. It's about challenges. It's about leadership. It's about seeking yourself, knowing yourself. All those factors. And I thought it's a great idea that just by learning how to climb mountains, and a lot of them are women who have professional lives. They do other things. They're doctors. They're engineers. They're tech. Entrepreneurs, they're working in different companies. So वो सारी चीजें हैं. What we want to see is more exclusivity. We should not uh, pull out our cameras to take a picture when we see a woman on the road driving a motorbike or a scooter. It should become normal. It should not be something which is strange, right? That strangeness should go away. I realized that myself because a few years ago when I saw somebody on a motorbike on the road, I had to take a picture. And then I realized, why am I doing this? Why shouldn't it be normal? Why can't she be going on her way to her office, or she could be going to a bazaar, or she could be going to visit somebody? There should be nothing unusual about it. We should consider it to be absolutely usual. That's what I say when I talk about inclusivity, right? That it should become the normal.
And what is equity to you?
Equity, to me, equity is beyond the journey that you have in terms of creating value. It is about having a stake in something. You have an equity in something, right? You have a portion that belongs to you, and you're considered of value. So that is, to my mind, to my understanding of equity, it is beyond going, creating equals. It is building that value in a person.
Okay. Faisal Saab, what would be your message to the males in position of power and to the females in general, and particularly to the females who have been given that environment where they could thrive? What message would you give out to the females, especially to the ones who have been born with the silver spoon and have the opportunities, and then to the men in power for championing women causes?
So in terms of, gender politics, it's also about a class distinction. So there are different layers, there are different socio-economic strata. And the lower you go in the pyramid, the bigger becomes the problem that women face, right? So they face more harassment, they have less equity, they are not regarded as that, the work that they do is not regarded as being valuable enough. It's not measured. It's simply not measured. Running a home is a full-time job. And if you're working and running a home, that is more than a full-time job. So men in power, men who run companies, men who sit on boards, men who determine, what's going to happen, they need to realize that they're missing out big time if they do not allow space to women who come to work alongside them. They're actually missing out. It is smart business to let women who have the competence and who have the desire and who have the ambition to rise, do not create barriers for them. Remove barriers. Remove as many barriers as you can. To families, I would say, please value, your daughters. Please value your sisters. Please value your wives, simply because they bring a big dimension to your lives, right? And they are very, very competent. Women are very resilient. They're they're made that way. They're physiologically also far, far better designed than us. They can bear a lot more than we can, right, as men. So we need to realize that, the hunter-gatherer period is over. We are no longer the ones, who can go hunt and bring food back home. They can do it equally well. So, the environment has changed. The tools of, productivity have changed. And we need to realize that, I was reading just day before, Malavala, who's of Pakistani origin, is now the dean of the astrophysics schools in MIT. And there are so many other women, people don't know. One of the first 8 founder members of WhatsApp, one was a woman from Pakistan, right? So Mubarak Imam. And she was the first, she was one of the first team of 8 that actually created WhatsApp. And we all use WhatsApp. And most of us would know that Mubarak Imam was part of that team that created this. And she went to MIT, and now she moved on from, she was a vice president at Facebook. So there are women internationally, there are a lot of them. Even locally now, you're beginning to see they're flexing, and they've done a simple thing. If they can't get their way with a male-dominated company, they simply go and create their own. And I would encourage more of them to do that, right? That's when possibly when they become competition, right, you will realize how good they can be at the roles that they should have.
Thank you so much, Faisal Saab, for your time. I really appreciated that you've become part of our own way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bisma.
Welcome.